In this playlist, we are going to see what is WebAssembly, why do we need to learn it, how to start, and finally write a basic WebAssembly module. The prerequisite of this playlist is a basic understanding of JavaScript. So what is WebAssembly and what is used for? WebAssembly is a JavaScript API for executing native machine codes inside the browser or Node.js environment. Before WebAssembly, we could only run JavaScript codes inside browsers, and JavaScript was not good enough for computationally expensive tasks. But with WebAssembly, we can reach the maximum possible speed on the client device. So in general, when we have some performance critical stuff to do, WebAssembly could be an option. We can use this API in two different ways. The first approach, which is more popular, is compiling code from a non-JavaScript programming language to WebAssembly. Then load the compiled WebAssembly code in our JavaScript app and run it. For example, we can write code in C++ and compile it to binary code, and finally load it to our JavaScript project. This is good news, especially for developers from non-JavaScript programming languages, which WebAssembly lets them jump into front-end development without learning JavaScript. For example, a .NET developer can build web UI with C# and run it through Blazor WebAssembly without knowing JavaScript or React or any other front-end frameworks. The second way, which seems intimidating at first, is writing code in WebAssembly text format, which is called WAT. This might be a hard way of using WebAssembly, but it could be promising for JavaScript developers which face a performance issue in their projects. Chances are a small WAT function fixes the bottleneck of their project and lets them to overcome the JavaScript limitations. Why do we need to learn WebAssembly? For a JavaScript developer, it is good to have a hands-on knowledge about all JavaScript APIs and their use cases. So, later on, when we face a problem, we know there is an API which could solve our problem. I agree that WebAssembly is much more than a regular API, but from a learning point of view, it is just another JavaScript API. In the case of WebAssembly text format, though it is a programming language, but it is different from rest of the programming language because it is built to run inside JavaScript. So we can think about it like many other syntaxes which we already learned or may learn in future as a JavaScript developer like HTML, CSS, JSX, Sass, and so on. In my opinion, the best way is to write a hello world function in WAT and run it by JavaScript and get the result. So in this way we can make sure we have a basic understanding of how this API works. Then later on in future, if there is a use case, we can dive more deeply into it. So let's get started with WebAssembly.